Good morning. Good morning. I'm sorry, we're a little disorganized. It's a Thai world. We're delighted to us here to learn more about Mid-Ohio workers and the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. We have two people from WA with us. Many of you have not met our new operations manager. Is that what you are?
That's
what he is. His name is Ben Lee. And then we have a wonderful volunteer who goes to the Ohio Wesleyan University, who has a few more syllables in her name. Sarah Marie Maldonado Burgos. That's right. We call her Sarah. Sarah. And so they're going to tell you stuff.
Making that.
Come on.
So this cat here.
You release the truth.
But the shit. And how that.
Yeah, it's about turn this off. It can turn out using it, and there's people being flashed up there. I mean, it's very nice people. Not yours. They're great right now.
This is Ethan Chow.
Yeah. He's going to be a deacon.
Deacon Ethan?
Yes, a deacon.
Okay. So is the microphone working? Is it amplifying? Okay.
Floppy.
So first of all, we want to thank Covenant Presbyterian for all of the hospitality, solidarity, support. You guys have been a real pillar of our holiday budget saving program for low-income and working families throughout Franklin County. So I really want to thank you for that. Kara has been our liaison force of nature making it happen. So we really thank you all very, very much for your support. Again, my name is Ben Lee, and I am the operations manager of Mid-Ohio Workers Association. I'm a full-time volunteer and what we call a cadre in the organization. My personal goals are the goals of this organization and what we're fighting for. So I'm making myself available full-time as a volunteer to push for the cause and to teach and train new organizers and community leaders through our groups. I have been a full-time organizer with groups like MWA for the past 18 years, since graduating from Berklee College of Music in 2005. And so, yeah, since that time, I've been in Boston. I've been organizing service workers in low-income parts of Boston. I've been in upstate New York, in the Finger Lakes area, organizing farm workers for 7 years there. And then Rochester, New York for 5 years in the inner city of Rochester, organizing local workers to have a say in determining the solutions to the problems they're facing day to day. And of course, big part of our discussion and our presentation and discussion today is about the ways in which climate change disproportionately affect low-income and minority communities, and why sustainable solutions must include empowerment of those individuals, families, and communities that are most affected by climate change. And so, very excited. I've been in Columbus now for about 4 months, so I'm still pretty new to the community, and I'm learning a lot, thanks to Karen and all of our volunteers and members. But some of these problems are global problems, right? And they have different manifestations in different regions, but we can sort of see the systemic problems that are the same, throughout our country. And so some of this is very transferable from one region to another. And this is one of those elements. So to my right is...
Because Sarah, she needs a light.
One kind of...
Hello. Hi, I'm Sarah. I am a student at OWU, and I volunteer at MWA every weekend. And I just got promoted to campus captain.
Yeah. Okay. Great stuff.
I am from Lorain, Ohio. It's just a small city outside. So, should I read?
No, not quite. I'm going to do a little. Before we launch into this, Sarah's going to do the kind of portion of our presentation that kind of acquaints everybody with who is Mid-Ohio Workers Association, what do we do, and then my portion will be more how this relates to sustainable development. But first I want to ask, how many here they feel like they're really not familiar with Mid-Ohio Workers Association? If I can get a show of hands, so really, who are these folks? Great, okay, so this is good. So we'll do we're hoping for that because we've been working with you all for a long time, but we know there's new congregants. We haven't, gotten a chance to reach everybody, so we're excited for this opportunity. So why don't I turn it over to Sarah to give you kind of the background of who is the Mid-Ohio Workers Association, what do we do, and then we'll tie this into sustainable development.
I'll start your question. The Ohio Workers Association is an independent organization of low-paid workers in Central Ohio. It began in 2001 and have always been 100% volunteer-run and non-funded. MWA operates a self-help mutual aid benefit programs to meet day-to-day needs and is building a unified voice for low-paid workers throughout the Workers Benefit Council so we can fight for long-term solutions to poverty for all workers. MWA's members are the backbone of the economy. We build and clean homes and office buildings, work in warehouses and fulfillment centers, food services and healthcare. We care for children and the elderly, and do a variety of other vital jobs, including hotel and office maintenance. Yet often receive wages that don't cover our survival needs for a family. 30% of Central Ohioans don't earn enough to afford food, rent, and utilities. 1 out of 6 Ohioans are threatened with a shutoff of their heat and electricity each year. In the past generations, most industrial workers in Columbus had strong unions that protected us from exploitation from large employers. However, the majority of workers in the U.S. have always been excluded from the right to form unions and remain unrecognized by the federal labor laws. This includes farm workers, domestic workers, independent contractors, and those working through temporary agencies. In fact, today in Columbus, there are 53,000 woodworking workers employed through temporary agencies who lack these and other rights. Meanwhile, the state, county, and city governments are giving tax breaks and guaranteeing profits to the largest corporations such as Amazon, Google, Intel, and others, allowing them to pay low wages to their workers and shifting the tax burden to the local businesses, homeowners, and workers who can least afford it. This is a major cause of our cost of living going up higher each year, while the government cuts funding to social welfare programs that poor and working people increasingly depend on. MWA's goals is to unite all of Central Ohio's low-paid workers in an independent organization that we can both meet many of our basic day-to-day needs, so day-to-day survival needs, and at the same time get a unified voice with which to fight these policies that keep us poor and struggling. Since 2001, MWA members and volunteers have built an 11-point self-help membership benefit program, including emergency and supplemental food, clothing distributions, medical care, dental care, legal advice, and English classes, and much more. We do this with a generous help of local businesses, faith communities, and professionals volunteering their services each month. MWA's benefits are not a charity. They are organized and run by our members, for our members, and provide a means for us to unite in mutual aid and self-help and gain the allies we need throughout the community in order to become a stronger force for lasting change. The benefits alone are not a long-term solution to our economic problems, but they do help meet our members' immediate survival needs to keep us on our feet while we organize to gain control over the living and working conditions, our living and working conditions, and bring about the end of poverty once for us. One example of a recent victory was when, during the pandemic, MWA was the sole voice of opposition to the electric company AEP's rate hike request. Through petitions, picket lines, and testifying at public hearings, we forced the state regulatory to block them from getting $110 million of increased electric rates for all of us. While this is only a small victory, it is proof that there is strength in numbers, and that if we organize together, we can fight these sorts of policies, and we can win. We are here today to invite all of you to join MWA as volunteers. Volunteers can help on outreach to low-income neighborhoods on Saturdays, can help sort and distribute food and clothing, can learn how to stop evictions and utility shutoffs. But our benefit advocacy sessions held Tuesdays and Thursdays can help with graphic design for our newspaper and other literature, or can even just help as a driver doing pickups and deliveries for college supplies. If you are a doctor, dentist, or lawyer, you can volunteer your professional services in our benefit programs. Whatever time or skills you can give will be a great help.
Sarah. Okay, so that's hopefully a decent introduction to Mid-Ohio Workers Association. And is that still okay? Am I amplifying?
Yeah.
Okay. So, MWA, are there any questions so far about what Sarah has already presented, about the kind of basics, what we're doing, how we're doing it?
So are you associated with a national organization?
We are part of a loose federation of sister organizations across the country. Like I said, I organized in Boston and Syracuse and Rochester before coming here, and that was all with local autonomous workers associations like MWA and those different communities that all use the same model and same sort of organizing method.
So is MWA national?
MWA is not national. MWA is local.
It's regional.
Yeah, in Franklin County. You know, we cover about Franklin County. Together, and I have our beautiful art calendars over here if anybody is interested when the presentation is over. We have a National Labor Federation art calendar that kind of gives the overview of the bigger picture of what we're, accomplishing and what the struggles are for working families. But across the country, we're trying to build these local organizations that really do represent the needs and priorities of unrecognized workers like
So
Sarah.
you have regional entities throughout the nation.
Well, we'd like to be in more.
Mid-Ohio,
That's right.
California.
There's many in California. There's a few in New York State, a few in New Jersey, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, Chicago, Oregon, Alaska. So it's spread out, but there's a lot of regions we haven't reached yet, and so it's not really a big national thing. It's a lot of local things that need to grow and spread out.
Okay.
Yeah, big question. And yeah.
So I've been around for a while, so I've had the pleasure of hearing about MWA. Finally, I think it's clicking with me organizationally. You're not trying to be any kind of hierarchical bunch where somebody is dictating to local organizations what your goals should be, but rather you kind of try to stay in touch and see if somebody else is doing something that would benefit you, but being really responsive to the needs of the people in that local community, because it's those people who are the organization, like a high degree of individuality.
We call it self-help and mutual aid. Those are two halves of the same thing. The program is run by the members, for the members. Our membership council meetings are Thursday nights, and we make decisions on what are the priorities of the benefit programs right there. So the goal is not just to provide services. We're not a union. We can't negotiate for wages with employers, okay? And in fact, most of our members are not recognized by labor law, and that's the majority of workers in the country. So, but what we can do is we can deal with cost of living issues, local government policy that's driving up cost of living, like the utility fight that Sarah was explaining. But it's really about making sure that the lowest paid workers have a voice, have an independent through organization, so that they can decide what are the solutions to the problems they're facing and how those solutions should be brought about. And that's something the MWA is bringing to the table, but we need allies. We need allies throughout other organizations, faith community, professionals, existing unions, local businesses. You see our sponsors guide there of all the local businesses and supporters that we are winning over the understanding that we're all going to sink or swim together, economically, and as far as the planet that we live in, the earth that we share. We're all in this together. And what I want to get into now is how the work of a local all-volunteer workers association is an indispensable part of sustainable development. And the dynamic that I'm explaining And the dynamic that in our society presently that we're trying to change through organizing is also an indispensable part of sustainable development. So is that okay if I continue with any of the burning questions before I? Okay, there'll be time for more questions. You can actually interrupt us if you have a question, and we'll do it like that. So NWA has been running a community education campaign for the implementation of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals since 2016 to build at the grassroots level a groundswell of support for and participation in the work to implement the Sustainable Development Goals here in the United States from the ground up. And actually, I'm always happy to see your beautiful Sustainable Development Goals poster with the Covenant Presbyterian Church, right on when you walk right in the front door. So this is a faith community that it has officially endorsed the Sustainable Development Goals. And keep up the good work. Please. It starts with knowing about it, and then what kind of action can be taken after we know about it, and what. So what are these things? So the 193 nations have put out a call in the name of international movement to each citizen to commit themselves to action in their own country so we can collectively change the course the world is heading in toward a sustainable path. All 193 member nations of the UN, which includes the United States, signed the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda. It's called the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development back in 2015. Has anybody here heard of the Sustainable Development Goals? Okay, good, of course. Anybody else? Wait, anyone else familiar with this? Or
Carrie, Carrie, it's talked about.
That's right.
It with time.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
Good. But unfortunately, the majority of North Americans have never heard of this before. And this is something that our government signed off on, 8 years ago. Gosh, 9 years ago now.
Yeah.
We're more than halfway to the deadline, and we're moving in the wrong direction. So, why haven't we heard of this, right? I mean, we have every means of instant communication right in our pockets, but still it's like crickets in the ring when you ask, who's heard of the Sustainable Development Goals? The U.S. is actually the only major industrial power in the world that has not given a voluntary review to the United Nations regarding their progress in pursuit of these goals. It's really a shame and embarrassment for our country. Once you hear this presentation, you might wonder why you've not heard about the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals in the media or from those government bodies or individuals primarily responsible to ensure that these goals are achieved in our country. We'll be discussing what you can do to promote the achievement of these goals toward the end. In 2001, concerned working people and others in Columbus saw that no one person can solve our greatest problems alone, and so we formed an organization, Mid-Ohio Workers Association, to begin to address common solutions to common problems. And it takes organization. Individual acts have not worked to solve common problems. 80% of the new jobs created in our region fall into the low-paid, unrecognized service worker strata, now working in low-paid, part-time, temporary, domestic work, and those numbers are continuing to grow. We know that none of us can truly consider ourselves safe or untouched by these problems as poverty grows, and of course, as the environment continues to be degraded and climate change is affecting more and more regions of the country. Okay, so we talked about this part already. So what does sustainable development mean? And this is where, we really have to kind of start from the building blocks, from square one. The concept of sustainable development was defined and accepted globally at the 1987 World Commission on Environment and Development Conference. And so it was an international kind of consensus of this is what we mean when we talk collectively as a planet about sustainable development. Quote, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Let that sink in. So economic development, social development, some progress, development of our, of our country, of our society that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In other words, sustainable development is the criteria for achieving social and economic progress in ways that will not exhaust the Earth's finite resources and not exploit or impoverish one group of people for the enrichment of another, right? Because if it's doing that, then it's not meeting the needs of those people. That's not sustainable development. So the majority of the nations in the international community have been fighting for this principle for the past 3 decades. There was the Millennium Development Goals that had similar targets, and then there was the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in 2015. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is not just a UN declaration. The agenda is the product of over 20 years of international work and debate. It is also the product of political shifts in approach to economic, social, and environmental questions, and an approach that has gained consensus among most of the nations of the world, that a new mode of addressing the problems of poverty, hunger, homelessness, water scarcity, and unnecessary death by malnutrition and environmental destruction is possible and needed to truly develop a sustainable future for everyone. The Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, you'll hear us refer to the SDGs as the Sustainable Development Goals, are not a UN program per se. It is not going to be carried out by the UN. It is meant for each country to carry out in their own country, for each government to adopt it into their national domestic policies and as the basis for their foreign policies in cooperation with other countries. This includes the United States, and the US government said they would do it too. In an historic summit held on September 25th, 2015 in New York City, all 193 member nations of the UA, including the United States, agreed to commit ourselves, quote, commit ourselves to working tirelessly for the full implementation of this agenda by the year 2030. The agenda and the 17 goals it contains are the product of a 3-year process involving representatives from all 193 nations of the UN and many hundreds of non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, and civil society groups representing indigenous people, small farmers, working people, environmental movement people, scientists, social workers, minorities, women's groups, and other stakeholders. Hundreds of conferences, discussions, debates, surveys took place around the world. For 3 years, this process, and it was kind of looking back at why various nations had not met Millennium, Summit goals, and how to adjust the process and the criteria and the priorities to be able to do it, and also based on what were now the burning, priorities of sustainable society that needed to be addressed. So MWA began this community education campaign because the mainstream media and basically all media in the US has been silent about the SDGs, and the government has been silent about it too. The entire rest of the globe agreed that if we do not achieve these goals by the year 2030, the world will proceed to be increasingly an unlivable place for humanity. And the document itself calls on people of each nation to keep their governments accountable to this pledge. Literally says that in there. So we will now read through the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and if you turn to page 3 of the newspaper that we handed out, you can read along and sort of see what the different categories are. We also have them up here if you have superhuman vision and can read the small print far away or over here. But I also passed out ones you will be along with us. So Sarah and I are going to bounce back and forth for now see Mark.
Oh, equals this. 1. Goal 1, end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Please note that it does not say end extreme poverty. It says end all poverty in all forms everywhere. This is because they agree that the resources exist to make this goal possible. The poverty in the world is not due to the lack of sufficient wealth and resources in the world. The goal is affirmative of the U.S., where currently 1 in 7 people in the U.S. live at or below the U.S. poverty line, and nearly half of Americans will experience at least a year of poverty or near poverty during their working lives. over 149 Americans are currently living in poverty or on the brink. Since 2001, MWA's goal is to end poverty by uniting those most affected, service, temporary, part-time, and other workers, along with allies from all walks of life, in a determined struggle to gain control over our own living and working conditions.
Given the title, we should do is we're going to go first, not least the goal. My precious exclamations at this point, so we have time for discussion. So goal number 2 is end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, promote sustainable agriculture. And we're going to do most of that now, but maybe not every single one.
Ensure healthy lives and promote the well-being for all at all ages.
In goal number 4, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities.
Achieve gender equality to empower all women and girls.
Goal number 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all.
Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all.
So one of the things I want you to kind of pay attention to here is, in all of these examples, it's talking about, first of all, where the food comes from, where the energy comes from, but it's also talking about access. And it's talking about, for all, because if the U.S. transitions over to renewable energy, but does so in a way that makes it increasingly unaffordable for the majority of people, well, then the majority are still looking at shutoff notices in mail saying their green energy. You see what I mean? This is not sustainable. If agriculture transitions to completely organic and sustainable agricultural practices, but does so in a way that continues to pay poverty wages to farm workers and small family farmers and transportation and wholesale retail workers, and then nobody can end up affording the food that they help to produce. Is that sustainable? Well, it's green agriculture, but it's not accessible. So sustainability has 3 dimensions, 3 components that are often overlooked in some circles. Environmental is part of it, right? Ecologically responsible is a major part of it, but so is economically viable. Sustainable solutions have to be economically viable, doable, achievable, and they also have to be socially inclusive. They can't exclude one portion of society who gets thrown under the bus on the road to green energy or the road to organic agriculture and so forth. So these 3 pillars have to all be included and respected in a sustainable development program. And so the 17 goals deal with that. And so goal number 8 was promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all.
Goal 10, reduce inequality within and among countries.
Goal 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable.
Ensure sustainable consumption and production pact.
Of course, goal 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts.
Conserve and sustainably use the oceans, sea, and marine resources for sustainable development.
15, protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. There's a lot of folks up here right now from Central America who lived in regions in Central America that have become arable land has become desert. They can no longer produce feed there as a result of climate change. So in the Americas, we do have climate refugees now as well from Central America coming up north. Now, having read most of these goals, it's important to emphasize how interrelated and indivisible they are. The entire logic of the 35-page 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and these goals emphasizes that all 17 goals are interconnected and indivisible, i.e. we cannot achieve or hold on to the success of achieving one of these goals without achieving all of them. There's been a lot of talk of, Biden's Green New Deal, what is the American Jobs Plan, and from what we see, there's a lot of great intention, but what we're seeing is a lot of sort of trickle down policies that we're very familiar with in Ohio and across the country, where the largest companies, largest corporations are given billions and billions in tax breaks and incentives in order to attract their business to a certain region, to get them producing in a certain manner. But there is really no precedent in this country for those policies resulting in widespread living wage jobs and a viable tax base for those communities. Look at where we're at right now in Franklin County. Franklin County has 14% of the property value in the state of Ohio, but gives away 35% of all the tax breaks to developers. And we see it all around. You can't ignore it, all the construction and building that's going on. But in our communities, what this is resulting in, and I'm sure up here as well, is our property taxes have skyrocketed. Our property values have skyrocketed. It skyrocketed in sort of fictional ways. They're not really worth more. We didn't do more work on these properties. They're depreciating, but the value is going up. And so because of that and because of inflation on building materials, property insurance has doubled. And we have people that are literally losing their homes right now as a result of this. I'm not exaggerating. One lady that we met the other day on our door-to-door canvassing in Linden was beside herself. She's been living in that apartment for 31 years. Paying rent, it's $500-600 a month rent in that apartment, which is very affordable for Columbus. Her rent just went up to $900 a month. Her income is $750 a month. This is an eviction notice, effectively in becoming. And so this story is repeating over and over and over again in our community. And this is what happens when billion-dollar corporations are not required to shoulder their fair share of the tax burden, and that then gets put on the rest of us. If that happens with the Green New Deal, if that's how they plan to solve the problem and get production of electric cars that most of us can't afford, and solar panels, we don't own a home, we can't put panels on it anyway. And if this is what the solution is, what we're going to end up with is a ballooning cost of living for the majority of working people that can't afford it. We're going to end up with the government borrowing more and more, selling treasury bonds to fund this, because that's the other way they fund these projects is municipal debt and it's public debt, and have no real way to pay it back in order to make sure that these corporations are extremely profitable. It's green, all right, but it's not that kind of green. It's this kind of green, And so that's our concern with these types of strategies for change. That's one angle. The other angle we hear about is, well, focus on yourself. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Personal choice. Do the right thing as an individual. And if we all do that, we'll solve the problem. Well, do that, but right now, 100 of the largest corporations in the world contribute 70% of all of the carbon emissions. Our individual consumption habits are not going to change that. One of the biggest consumers of fossil fuels in the world is the U.S. military. We've got 800 military bases around the world. We've got an $886 billion military budget this year. There's a lot of forces in play, in motion, consuming and burning fossil fuels and putting this into the atmosphere, worsening climate change that our individual consumption habits cannot affect. We do need to take responsibility for our choices, but we also need to organize to make sure that we're holding these institutions accountable to the solutions that all of us need, and to do it in a way that leaves no one behind. That's what sustainability is really about. And that's why MWA's strategy of uniting the poorest workers, empowering each other through organization to make decisions about how to meet these needs through this mutual aid and self-help benefit program, gaining allies in the community that have the resources and the professional skills to offer. and then using that strength and organization to begin to hold accountable state agencies. Sarah told you about Italian. During the pandemic, we were the sole voice of opposition to the utility rate hike. That was a small victory. It was a lot to us, but in the grand scheme, we know it was a drop in the bucket. But it is kind of the microcosm of what can be done if we organize, if we unite together and leave no one behind and use that strength to go after the root cause of the problem. There is more than enough technology, know-how, ingenuity, solution. There's more than enough solutions. There's more solutions than there are problems right now. But they're not being implemented. They're not being, pushed and put in. And then we have to ask that question, why? Could it have something to do with the amount of political power the fossil fuel industry still has? Could it have something to do with the amount of political power the military-industrial complex still has? Could it have something to do with who our political leaders in Washington and in Columbus and across the country are accountable to when the candidates that win elections are usually the ones that raise the most money? Who did they raise that money from? Was it from poor people? Or was it from the people profiting fabulously off of the way things are right now? Do they have a vested interest in this changing? If not, who do we want our political leaders to be accountable to? How do we achieve that? And so this is kind of where I want to leave our presentation and open a discussion. I know we're low on time. What we want to do while we're answering questions and discussing, we want to pass around clipboards because really the goal is let's stay in touch. Let's continue to talk about this. There's many ways you can help. Sarah laid a bunch of them out. It really is a time of action. I think all of us here know what the problem is. Let's act, let's do something about it. And so we're asking you to do that with us, if you can make the time, so that nobody is left behind and left out of fighting for a sustainable society. That's it, thank you. See. Okay, now that we've burdened you with all of that, any questions, any comments?
What are we signing up for?
This is not a petition. This is a contact list. This is, yes, and you're basically saying, yeah, I'm interested in learning more about your work. I'm interested in learning how I can help. It's not a commitment to any specific thing, but it's so we can continue that conversation with a phone call. We won't email you. We really like to talk to everybody one at a time. We're old-fashioned that way, a little bit analog, and we find it works great, works better. Yeah.
I found another thing to ask you about that's sort of just like really concrete. So I hear that you go around and canvas.
Yeah.
It's one of the, and I assume that's volunteers are doing this because it's volunteerless. So when you canvas, are you giving this kind of ask or are you trying to talk about the sustainable development goals? What do the MDWA people do? I assume that would have to be shorter.
We're not really talking about sustainable development goals. What we're doing is we're going in with the neighborhoods, trying to reach out the most affected by these policies that are keeping them in the situation that they're in. We're kind of seeing love as members and, get them to help themselves in their community by offering the Unemployed Mutual Aid Benefit Program. And like UBC meetings, those happen every Thursday at 6 p.m. It's where these workers can arise concerns and talk about what they're having trouble with, and we work with them together.
So the presentation on the canvas is about 3-4 minutes. It's short. It's it's a dialogue. We want to learn from the people in the community what they're going through and document that so that our programs and strategies reflect reality of what folks are facing. But it's not a whole long presentation like this. Once members get involved and come into the office, and then they're coming to classes and coming to presentations and learning from lived experiences of one another, that are being shared at the membership meetings. But it's more about economic injustice. The kind of rap that we give door to door is about I think the opening line is, my name's Ben, this is Sarah. We're volunteers at Mid-Ohio Workers Association on Summit Street. We're in the neighborhood. We're talking to all our neighbors right now because more hardworking families than ever are struggling to make ends meet in this economy. We don't see the government doing anything to really fix the problem. So we're doing something about it. We're letting everybody know how they can get a little extra help if they need it through this benefit program, and more important, how we can work together and fight for long-term solutions. Have you got a minute? And like 9 out of 10, if someone heard that, they're like, if it's not like a bad time, they have food on the stove or the kids crying or whatever, they're like, yeah, what's this about? And so everybody that hears the rap and has the conversation usually signs up because it's really a no-brainer. Membership is free and voluntary. There's no, 62 cents a month for the voluntary membership dues. It's symbolic. It's like just sticking your couch cushion and get your dues ready, it's really, but more important than the dues is helping out. It's volunteering, really emphasize that, being active, being participants great. It's a good question. Anybody else? A lot of people get together to talk about, the environment and sustainability, and a lot of it turns into like gardening techniques and, how to use your little corner of the world to make an impact. And that's important. I don't want to cast aspersions on that. But, we come from a community of people that don't have property, that don't have the ability to make those choices. So, but yet are the people that are suffering from the urban communities that are 22 degrees hotter in the summer on average than suburban and rural communities, that are living in food deserts where they can't get to, there's no grocery stores nearby. There's a corner store with all this unhealthy food and it's making people sick. That's all they can access, so we want to understand how climate change is impacting all the different socioeconomic groupings and focusing on those impacting the worst and the first, and getting them involved in deciding what are the solutions and saying and how can they be met. And that's what we're doing. And we need your help.
I don't know about this.
Please, yeah. So we just launched a website last month, and our QR code is right there on the flyer. If you haven't taken a look at that, please do. All of this and more information, and more importantly, lots of good pictures, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Images of about what volunteer activities and Karen features prominently on the website.
With my mouth open. Sorry.
So please check it out and share it and pass it along.
And they relate to the sustainable development.
That's right. Every time there's like a benefit described, there's a little SDG icon, and you click on it, it gives you more information about the 2030 agenda for sustainable development.
Okay. I just want to. Yes.
I'm just so impressed with the information that you have sent about this organization before, but it's so systemically gathered and put together. Mine was in a way that you're approaching it, and it's sort of counter to the way a lot of groups go about, which is going to political policymakers and a national and interpreter. It seems to me that your goal is to empower those that don't realize they have the power to speak out about this kind of thing. So it's in some, it's really impressive, the information that you come out and the way that you have articulated the misinformation. So, yeah, I guess that's as much as I want to say. But, and it's, this is a kind of election year. But you're having a good exchange right now at the national level, and it's not trickling down.
It's not trickling down
to where it needs to.
Yeah.
I just want to reinforce one other thing. I'm grateful this has been a good presentation, guys. But everyone at Mid-Ohio Workers Association is a volunteer, including Ben and any other full-time people we've had over the years. And everything we have is donated. You get stuff from our sponsor and everything. Anytime you find a little extra hanging around, we'll take it.
We make every dollar turn into 100. Yes.
Do you have a food pantry?
We have an emergency food closet. Yeah, and we are struggling to keep it stocked because it's in high demand right now.
You want to donate food, we'll take it.
We have a non-perishables food closet, and then every Friday we also have volunteers that go around and pick up perishable food donations as well. There's a couple of restaurants that donate frozen soups that we send out, and then meat items, and then there's San Filippo Wholesale Produce that donates a pallet of produce every Friday. D&O Wholesale, Premier Produce One now gives once a month. So we do a fresh food distribution for about 45 families on Fridays, but then we're open every day of the week. 7 days a week, 9 to 9. We are open every day, all volunteer, and we have people come in any day, Burler Agency food, and they leave with bag or box same day, immediately. And because we're non-government funded, we don't have any sort of income guidelines. This is for everybody.
And I'd like to emphasize more than ever now, we used to table at Fresh During, but now they've got out tables, so now we can't really go every Friday to get the food we need, because we do take on campuses emergency food requests, which are a bunch of non-perishables in back from that closet. And eventually we will run out. The closet is like up and down. It's not always full, and we really do need patience. So if you have, if you're anyone who might have non-perishables, eat it yourselves. It'd be great help if you can have it to this.
And thank you for bringing that up, because we need referrals to grocery stores, like independent grocery stores, usually not the chain ones, because we have these literature tables outside the grocery store are just like golden. You meet people, they can go in, shop, buy extra stuff, and drop it off. Okay. They can drop off food, right then and there. And so we are in need of referrals to like grocery store managers, to talk to them about hosting an MWA food drive outside the store. But all right, thank you very much. If you haven't gotten your name and phone number down on the clipboard, we'd love to keep in touch. We have beautiful art calendars. If you do want to donate, there's a suggested donation of $20 a piece. There's posters. Everybody, this is not optional. This is not optional. Everybody has to take a poster home and put it up in your window so that people in your community can see that you support sustainable development goals. And then they'll ask you about it, and they'll say, what's that? And you can tell them everything you know. So thank you. Sarah and I will hang around for a few minutes if you want to be tardy for church. Otherwise, we'll hopefully be in touch soon.
Thank you. They got a great promotion.